Sometimes books are titled the right way, and sometimes they're not. I think this one is have the appropriate title because it's called "Lessons from Eviction Court: How We Fix Our Housing Crisis," and it really is taking the lessons that we learn mostly from our clients about how they struggle and why they can't afford their housing and why they're in eviction court, and then using those client stories. I don't use their names in the book. I use pseudonyms, but they're real stories and real clients in our community, and how they struggle, and using that to illustrate how we can fix the problem. And it comes out of this is a conversation that we've had in our classrooms for years. We talk about the clients, and that leads to we have a client who is a mom with 3 young kids, and one of the kids got sick and car broke down and they fell behind on their rent. The cliche that we're all half the country is one paycheck away from being homeless. We see that cliche is really true in eviction court because people just fall a little bit behind, then the walls come tumbling down. So what's the answer for her? The answer is she's eligible for subsidized housing, but we have a situation in the United States where 3 out of every 4 households who are eligible for subsidized housing don't get it because we don't fund it enough. So if you're eligible for food stamps, you're eligible for Medicaid, you receive it. It's called an entitlement, but housing isn't, and we can change that. Other nations have do it much differently and much better. We used to do it much better in the United States, a generation or 2 ago. So the client's own challenges that we see are the point us in the direction of the policies that we think can and should be changed.
Absolutely. And alongside, the lack of subsidized housing, what would you say are kind of the biggest issues facing the eviction crisis, not only in the United States, but in Indiana?
Yeah. I do think that's the big one. I think that the most people come to eviction court because they simply can't afford market rate rent. They are living with a disability and therefore they have very limited income, or they've, got kids, or somebody's been sick, or a car's broken down. And so their paychecks have not been what they would like them to be. And as a result, they just can't afford market rate rent of $1,000, $1,100, $1,200 and more if you've got a several kids. And so subsidized housing is, we think, the end game. But in the meantime, on the path to that, Indiana is really an interesting example because we have really high eviction rates. By some measures, some of the highest eviction rates in the country, which if you think about it, doesn't make a lot of sense because housing is difficult for our clients to afford, but housing is cheaper in Indiana than it is in the coast or in big cities. So why do we have higher eviction rates? And I think, unfortunately, that turns the attention back to our court system, to our legal system, because we make evictions in Indiana. We use the term fast, cheap, and easy. We make it very easy for a landlord to file a case and to get an eviction order. Sometimes within days, family gets put out, the case is over. It's cheap to do that. It only costs $100 or so to file the case. Oftentimes, the landlords will have to hire attorneys to do this work, but the attorneys do huge volumes of the work because the tenants on the other side almost never have a lawyer. So it's pretty easy process. And in Indiana, we don't have a clear statutory authority for tenants to withhold rent if the conditions have been bad. So we have made our court system into an eviction mill. And, again, that's the choice by our judiciary. It's a choice by our legislature. And as a result, we've got these really high eviction rates. In Indianapolis, where we are, there's 500 new eviction filings every single week. Just in one county of the state, just huge numbers. And there's 10 different courts that are operating multiple eviction dockets each week. It just in one county. We do so much of that. And those of your listeners who are lawyers would recognize that nothing else in the legal system acts that. A criminal case takes months to resolve. A contract case takes months, if not years, to resolve. A tort case takes months, if not years. Same with family law. But in an eviction case, we provide this really dramatic remedy of kicking a family out of their home, and we do it within days. And we do it almost solely with the tenants not having any legal counsel, so they simply should put up no real significant defense to this happening. So we've got to look back on, for those of us who are lawyers, those of us involved in the court system, and our role in this, because our court system does make it much, much easier for folks to lose their home much more quickly.